Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 13 of Two Takes with Alex and Tate. We are very, very happy that Alex is back home in the country, safe. Uh, Alex, before we get started, I was going to do a little more of an introduction, but let's just go ahead. Do you have anything you want to say about your trip to Ireland?
Everybody needs to go to Ireland whenever it's off season, like in December, because it's not snowing a ton. That doesn't happen apparently until like late January, February, kind of March area. You will need to take a bunch of vitamin D because it's the sun lasts maybe 7.5 hours of decent sunlight if it's not cloudy.
Now, that's
Uh,
interesting. Okay.
yeah, and it never gets above like I don't know 70 degrees in the
Oh,
sky
okay.
because it's so far north. Um, Trip of a lifetime. Like, so happy that I could do that for my wife as our first anniversary gift. And it sucked. I got sick, so my normally luscious, warm voice still a little like you kind of hear it. I'm still a little stuffed up, but
Right. Sure.
and also if you're ever in Ireland, Cork is not like the most amazing city, but about 20 miles to the east is a city called Middleton, where where they do all of the distilling for Jameson, the Green Spot line, Redbreast, incredible tours there. I can't remember our tour guide's name, but he was awesome. So make sure you go to Middleton and get yourself some nice whiskey. But that was about oh, and I got to sing in an Irish pub. I brought
Saw
a
that
little bit of
video, man. You sounded really good playing the steel string acoustic guitar.
steel string. I brought some of the Oklahoma culture, singing some Hank Thompson out there.
I
So
imagine that they love that in Ireland. Yeah, they probably had never heard that song before.
never. And but made some friends. Let's get into football. Tate,
Yes.
how how about them Cowboys?
Do we have to start with that game? No, it's okay. Well, we got to do it somewhere. Right, right. Yeah. So it can only get better from here. Just as a Cowboys fan, how disappointing it was watching that game. And my takeaway from it was just when the Cowboys reel you in and things seem to be breaking their way, and it's like, oh wow, we actually have a home playoff game, maybe two home playoff games. We got all the way to the two seed. We beat the Lions. You win the last week of the year and look really good, I thought. Just when they kind of reel you in is when they lose a game like this, right? And just the embarrassment of not being ready to play on both sides of the ball. I don't know what was going on with Dak and CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb seemed to not be able to even run the right route. I don't know if Dak was throwing the ball poorly, some combination of both. But those two were a deadly combination in the regular season and were hugely underwhelming, especially when the game mattered the most in the first half when we're trying to come back. But not being ready on that side of the ball, Dak Prescott with the turnovers, that's obviously what the critique of him last season was all year through the regular season. He led the league in picks, even though he missed 5 games, really was bad. People thought he was kind of over it this season. And in the biggest spot, it just came right back through, and when he threw that pick six at the end of the first half, the game was over. And I don't care what the final stats looked like. Dak Prescott has been one of the kings of garbage time yards in his career. He gets a lot of kind of empty calories at the end of these games where they're getting their ass kicked and then they kind of come back and try to make the numbers look a little better. That game was never close. That game from the first drive, we knew Dallas was in trouble. Green Bay marched right down. They took the ball, which I thought was actually really, really smart because Dallas totally built their team to play with the lead, right? They don't really have a super ground and pound running game, but they can get it going with a short passing game and get Pollard out in space. And then on the defensive side, what we want to do is rush the passer and play zone. When we're not able to rush the passer and play zone, when teams kind of hit us in the mouth, we saw this really a few times really bad down the end of the stretch here to in the season. Teams that ran right at the Dallas Cowboys defense exposed, I thought, a real flaw on the defensive side of the ball for the Dallas Cowboys in the middle of that defense, where Aaron Jones had a career day on the ground. I think 3 touchdowns on the ground, which is just you're not going to win a lot of playoff games if the other team's running back accounts for 3 touchdowns by himself. That's a big ask, almost no matter who you're playing. And then at the quarterback position, one of the things that I hate about watching the Cowboys in the playoffs and Dak Prescott particularly is kind of by default, you play good teams and good quarterbacks in the playoffs. There is just such a gaping eye test difference between Dak and most of the other quarterbacks that you end up playing in the postseason, where Jordan Love, it just looks different, man. And Dak, and I've kind of used this comparison a couple times the last couple days. And Dak, I want to give some credit to for the regular season he put together because I thought he had a real case for the MVP after the first 17 games, after the regular season. I thought he played the best football of his career, didn't turn it over, played at a really high level. But he is a little bit like Russell Westbrook learning to shoot the basketball to me. And here's what I mean by that. Russell Westbrook is athletic enough where he learned to make that mid-range jump shot, right? Wasn't super efficient with it ever, even in his prime, but he got where he could hit that free throw line pull-up jump shot where he basically shot like he had springs in his legs, jumped as high as he could, and made that jump shot, but it just never looked very natural. That is kind of Dak Prescott at the quarterback position to me, where he has definitely learned how to make these throws in large part, especially when he has time to set his feet, when the offensive line protects, he can deliver the ball on time and pretty accurately when things are going well and when he has protection and is able to set his feet. Jordan Love and some of these other elite level quarterbacks, at least from a talent standpoint, like Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Love, who we saw, Matthew Stafford, who played yesterday, they all have it's just an easier looking throwing motion. It just looks a lot more natural. And when these guys have to make a throw off their back foot or a little bit off balance, you look at CJ Stroud, who we'll talk about, it just looks effortless for him. And Dak Prescott, if he has to make a throw off the back foot or kind of off balance, I just flatly think it's going to be a turnover when it leaves his hand. And it just doesn't look as easy for him. I think when we see these limited players at the quarterback position get into these big spots, I don't know that the moment's too big for them. I just think the defense tightens up and they can't make the throws. I don't think it's necessarily in their head. The pick six was a mental mistake by Dak, but some of the other misses, I just thought it's like, okay, that's just a hard throw to make. And Dak isn't really great at making hard throws. He does it sometimes, but it's always, like I said, when the conditions are right, when he can set his feet. And Jordan Love had a couple plays. The touchdown, I forget exactly which one it was because they scored so many on us, but he had a touchdown to number 13 where he kind of flicked the wrist off his back foot about 25 yards into the end zone. It hit the guy perfectly in stride. And I was watching that. I was like, man, that is just not something Dak has in the arsenal that he can do, where he can loft that ball off his back foot over the linebackers, over the safety, and hit someone right in the pocket. That's just not something he has the arsenal to do. And I think we see the playoffs give these teams a lot of clarity, where to me, from a Cowboy standpoint, I don't see how Mike McCarthy is the head coach going into the next season. As embarrassing as that was, and let's call it what it is, sometimes the optics matter in things, where if we had lost a game in overtime where we go down and kick a field goal and they break a big touchdown, or we lose on a last second field goal by 1 point where Jordan Love makes a great drive at the end of the game, that would be one thing. To be down 48-16 in the fourth quarter is a whole different loss. And it was 27-0. It was 48-16. It was just embarrassing as a Cowboys team who was a touchdown favorite, who arguably has the better roster, supposed to have the better quarterback. I think that probably has changed now. I think most people, after watching especially if you've been paying attention to Jordan Love the last 6 weeks of the season, he has been awesome. And people that were surprised by this performance, frankly, have not been paying attention to how good Jordan Love has been the last 6 weeks of the year. Uh, but and then the defense was so out of position at times, didn't rush the passer, and kind of the last thing I want to say from a Cowboys standpoint about the defense, at least, is where has Micah Parsons been? This is a guy who is supposed to be the best defensive player in the league, who in the last 2 or 3 big games Dallas has played has basically been a non-factor. And I'm thinking about the Miami game, and yeah, he got held some, and they didn't call it. But welcome to being an elite NFL pass rusher. You are going to get held, and they are not going to call it all the time, and you're going to have to be effective anyways. And that was not something he was able to do. So disappointing from Dak. I don't think Mike McCarthy's the head coach next season. I would personally love it if we got Belichick. I know some people think he's a little old, and yes, he is a little old, but I think that would be so bringing him into Dallas with that defensive personnel and bring in a real offensive coordinator, even Josh McDaniel, I think would be really exciting. And then the biggest question for the Cowboys, because I think moving on from McCarthy is an easy one, is what kind of contract is Dak Prescott going to get, if any, from the Cowboys organization? Because the last time we signed Dak to an extension, I said flatly, we are not going to be a real Super Bowl contender while Dak is under this contract. And here we are 4 or 5 years later in the same situation. And if we make Dak, like Jerry Jones said a few weeks ago, the highest paid player in the league, we are flatly not going to be a Super Bowl contender while he is under that contract. And so do you try to move on? Do you try to sign him to a short-term deal and draft somebody? Do you try to trade him to Chicago if Caleb Williams is serious about not wanting to play for Chicago, and try to go get the first pick and trade him Dak Prescott and a couple first rounders and see if you can't get Caleb Williams from the Bears? What?
You haven't kept up with the news. Uh, Caleb Williams, congratulations, you are a Chicago Bear. He officially declared for the
Okay.
draft.
Okay. So Uh,
So
well, maybe we go get Justin Fields then. And I think I said yesterday before, thank you for breaking that news, Alex. Reporter Alex over here on air. He declared for the draft, huh? That's probably the right decision to make. And the Bears, eh, we might be good with him. He's got a shot to be good anywhere. Uh, I don't love that they basically cleaned house but the head coach, but that's kind of the Bears for you. Anyway, I think you call about Justin Fields, someone with some upside, and I think it's time to reboot the franchise. The problem is Jerry Jones loves Dak and kind of wants to win on his terms, and I don't think he's going to move on from Dak Prescott. And I think we're going to be stuck in this no man's land where we're not going to be bad enough to draft an elite quarterback prospect in any of the drafts with Dak Prescott, but we're also not going to be good enough to really beat a team like San Francisco or maybe the Rams or shoot Green Bay. You know what I mean? Moving forward in these postseason games. So it's just a tough situation for the Cowboys, I think. Then on the other side of the field, if I'm Green Bay, the sky is the freaking limit in the future. And all of that offense, besides Aaron Jones, is a bunch of babies. And Romeo Dobbs looked like a receiver version of Kelsey finding holes in that zone yesterday. He's really someone that I like watching play. I don't know that he's ever going to produce at an elite level because they have other options on that team, but he has great body control and can adjust to these different throws. He is awesome at finding holes in the zone. He's really a cerebral receiver. I really appreciate Romeo Dobbs' game. And Jordan Love, man, when you have the quarterback, and shout out to Green Bay for going from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to someone who looks like already a top 10 quarterback in the league to me. Just the eye test. I know the numbers supported that too down the stretch, but when you watched him yesterday, that's what a franchise quarterback looks like. And I don't know if he's going to end up being consistent and being closer to the fifth best quarterback in the league or the 15th best quarterback in the league, but he is a franchise guy. And when you see that level upside, when you see his ability to go win a big game on the road in the postseason, you are feeling really, really good as a Green Bay fan. I think Matt LaFleur deserves a lot of credit for having his team obviously ready to go. I mean, let's call it what it is. He coached circles around McCarthy yesterday. lapped him a few times. And, so you got the coach, you got the quarterback. They obviously do a great job developing receivers in Green Bay. I think they do a good job developing the defense, who looked better yesterday than it did at any point in the rest of the season. So I think they're trending in the right direction. I have to say, I do think they're going to go get their ass kicked in San Francisco, but that does not negate what a positive season this has been, what an impressive start to his career Jordan Love has had, and how even if with a huge loss in San Francisco, they have great momentum going in the next season. And if I'm Green Bay, I feel awesome no matter what happens next weekend.
Yeah. So the moment I knew Dallas had no chance, and I texted you about it during the game,
Oh God.
was the Romeo Dobbs catch. He did the same like the exact same play that murdered him for 20 yards.
Did it
Like
again. Right. Yeah. And it was
that.
just, I know exactly what you're talking about, where he just found a hole right in the middle of the zone, 20 yards down the field, just ran set right in the soft spot in the zone. And yeah, I totally agree where it's like, man, you can't let them beat you with the same play over and over again. And it was Romeo Dobbs beating the zone and Aaron Jones running up the middle. It's like, man, in the second half, it was just frustrating to watch. It was just frustrating to watch.
With your 12-year-old cousin and he just keeps spamming X and it keeps
Right.
it's just like, come on, man, do something.
Like playing 2K and one guy has one dribble move that you can't guard. He does it every play. It's like, man, just make me feel better and do something else. Anyway, it's like, come on. But
I think so. Dak's cap hit next year is
59
50
million.
and dead cap 61. Who's gonna take that? You're locked in. I mean, you take the medicine, you get rid of some pieces, and you see what you trot Trey Lance out there and see if he can do anything for you. Spoilers, he can't. And then you kind of take one year on the chin. But you just can't bring Dak back.
I
Like you
would
can't
have a hard time extending him after watching that game yesterday.
he looked lost. He was playing the blame game on the field, which is not what you want to see from a
Frankly,
franchise.
kind of out of character for him. And you can see the frustration, I think, over a few years of being embarrassed in the postseason starting to build up and come out from Dak yesterday. Because he is usually, we talked about the physical limitations that he has as a quarterback, but the mental game and the podium and the leadership stuff is usually an A double plus. You know what I mean? It's usually as good as it gets on that kind of stuff. And that he started showing those frustrations lets you know how difficult the Cowboys have had it in the postseason the last 3 years, even before then.
Yeah, so I think that you just you chalk up next season to whatever it is. Do not give Dak Prescott an extension. Let him walk and like especially because I mean the NFC is not getting easier. The draft like kind of the standings took care of this AFC NFC realignment where a lot of NFC teams are about to get some really good looking quarterbacks. So you're
Bears, Caleb Williams, Washington, probably Drake May, but maybe Penix. It's like there's a couple guys that you should consider, but whoever you like, probably going to be,
yeah, no,
a start or you would think at the second pick in the draft.
Jalen Daniels, Commanders is already linking Jalen Daniels, who his upside
Yeah,
is
yeah.
uh,
I like him. Yeah, it's like I think he's a little undersized, but we've seen, he's not any smaller than CJ Stroud is. CJ Stroud is a superstar.
yeah, and then you got Atlanta's going to be drafting high,
Right.
like it's not getting easier and Dak isn't getting better. In fact, he just got at least you could say we're going to the divisional round. Like that's the standard. We're getting there. And he just took a massive step back to a first year starting quarterback.
Yeah.
Uh coach coach has got just absolutely lacked, like you said.
Right.
So these are things that would make me nervous and make Jerry Jones pissed off enough to go throw money at a problem that you can't really throw money at in this league.
Right.
Uh, so I wonder. I'm interested to see who the next coach is because I'm with you. It's not Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know if it's Belichick just because it's that's a tough that's a lot of pressure if you're Belichick and you have to deal with Jerry Jones all the time and famously
You
Belichick
know,
doesn't
apparently they like each other though, is what I've heard. I'm kind of with you. I could see it. So almost any team that's looking for a coach, here's who I would call in order. Harbaugh number one. If you can get Harbaugh, like he's the big fish out there to be. Like he's the grand prize. If you get him, you are in great shape moving forward, almost no matter where he goes. Second call would be Bill Belichick. My third call and the 3 and 4 would be really close to me. I would actually probably call Ben Johnson for the Lions, who's obviously an elite play caller and kind of take a see if you hit a home run and get the next McVay kind of guy. It's like he may not be as good of a head coach as he's a play caller, but if he is, you got you got an elite level coach almost if he's as good, because that's how good of a play caller he is. And then Vrabel, I think, is an excellent head coach.
yeah.
And I would, if the Cowboys brought in any of those four, I would feel really good as far as having that be an upgrade over what we had currently.
Definitely. And I think, well, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. We're going to see what happens with the Cowboys because
It is
they
an
are.
interesting offseason for the Cowboys and frankly, exciting offseason for Green Bay, right? It's like, you
Exactly.
feel good having Jordan Love and having, LaFleur who, just kept thinking about this yesterday. It's like, man, what a good decision to move on from Aaron Rodgers. And like, Aaron Rodgers is sitting there with his torn Achilles with on a team that's just frankly horribly managed and kind of a dumpster fire. And Green Bay is an excellently run organization. They draft and develop well. It's kind of like, man, you had it pretty good. It seems like, you know what I mean? Like Jordan Love probably thrilled to be the Green Bay quarterback right now, with Dobbs and Watson and Reed and Aaron Jones and probably going to draft some offensive linemen and, develop that area of the team and really, I don't know. They're going to be good next season.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it's going to be tough sledding if you're in the NFC North, as it always is. But
Right.
let's go a little bit more positive.
Sure.
So Cleveland Browns get embarrassed in Texas
Right.
uh, by the team that moved on, got so many draft picks for Deshaun Watson.
One of whom ended up being CJ Stroud, right? Who okay, yeah. I mean, the story of this game is pretty simple. CJ Stroud has a chance to be, I'm not saying he's this yet. He has a chance to be a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the league. And to me, the best 2 quarterbacks in the league are Patrick Mahomes. I don't think anyone would dispute that. I still like Burrow more than Lamar. If you swap those two, I wouldn't push back super hard on you, but nobody thought Lamar was better than Burrow before the season. I want to see Burrow healthy one more year because if you want to say Burrow is an injury concern, well, Lamar was before this season too, right? So it's like if Burrow can stay healthy next season, I want to see him. CJ Stroud is the guy that has a chance to be on that level to me. The way he navigates the pocket, the way the ball just floats off his hand effortlessly, kind of what I was talking about with Jordan Love, but CJ Stroud, I think, is even um, a next level processor of the defense as a rookie, which is really hard to do. And here's a CJ Stroud stat for you. Not from yesterday or not from this weekend, but he's the third guy ever to lead the league in passing yards per game and touchdown to interception ratio. And the other 2 guys were Tom Brady in 2007 with Randy Moss, who won the MVP, and Aaron Rodgers, I think it was 2018, who also won the MVP, maybe it was 2019, and CJ Stroud. And that's it. So watching that game, it's just, like I said, the playoffs provides clarity for your team a lot of time. And CJ Stroud is a elite player in the NFL. And he turned a team that had the second pick in the draft that was a dumpster fire. And let's give a lot of credit to the head coach too. D'Amico, I think, has done an amazing job setting a culture. But if you dropped Kenny Pickett on the Texans, do you think they make the playoffs or do you think they have a top five pick in the draft?
No.
Probably closer to the top five pick in the draft, right? So I like I said, CJ Stroud, just his processing ability, and he had two throws yesterday up the right sideline. One of them was kind of out in the flat, and one of them was out in the sideline where he moves up in the pocket, navigates, basically shoots a fadeaway jump shot to the sideline and hits someone perfectly in stride. And the only other quarterback that I see make throws like that is Patrick Mahomes. And when I saw him make both those two plays, I was like, man, this guy is just playing at a different level than what we see. Even as impressive as Herbert was as a rookie, as impressive as some of these other guys have been, like I said, the only two guys that to me he reminds me of as far as the level is Burrow and Mahomes. And we'll have to see if he can sustain that success and stay healthy. There's a lot of factors that go into being one of the top elite quarterbacks in the league, like top two or three, but he looks like he has the ability to maybe get there. And that was really, really quite the performance. And, Flacco kind of came down to earth a little bit, unfortunately for the Browns fans, and kind of was a fun competitive game. It looked like the offenses were gonna light up the scoreboard, and then Flacco and back-to-back drives through two pick sixes, and the game was over. It was like, okay, it's like that was fun while it lasted, but Flacco. There's a reason why you went and paid $250 million for a quarterback, and so that way they wouldn't throw two pick sixes in in back-to-back possessions. But unfortunately, that guy doesn't want to play a lot of football. It looks like move forward, and from a Brown standpoint, not near as embarrassing to me as the Cowboys loss, where they were competitive for most of that game, kind of until those two turnovers. And what I thought was really interesting from the Brown standpoint, though, is as physically dominant as that defense has been, it looked slow. And they looked slow as a team compared to Houston. And Nico Collins lit him up and was frankly kind of doing whatever he wanted. And they didn't really have anyone who had the physical ability to guard him, and he's big and fast, and what a talent that guy is. And, side note, may not even be their best receiver in the future with Tank Dell. So, like, what a duo those two could be with Nico Collins. I think they're complementary too. And, so the Texans, you just keep building around CJ Stroud. You get the offensive line. I don't know that they're going to go to Baltimore and win a playoff game, but I wouldn't write it off entirely is what the way CJ Stroud's playing. And when you have someone like that, he is someone I don't think the moment is ever going to be too big for CJ Stroud. I don't he may like he's not going to play good in every playoff game he ever plays it, right? But it's not going to be because mentally he just choked, I don't think. It's like he's just going to have a bad game here or there, but it's not going to be because the moment was too big for him. And he's one of these guys that just kind of has it. So you build around, you maybe go get another lockdown corner, definitely build the offensive lineup. You probably need a feature back. Damian Pierce, I don't know what happened to that guy, but he's not really he doesn't look like much of an NFL guy after, I don't know if he just got a little older or what, even though it's just his second year. That happens to running backs that get a lot of carries in college who aren't elite talents. But you feel great if you're Houston moving forward. And then Cleveland, I like the coach. I think Stefanski is a pretty good coach, but what in the heck do you do at the quarterback position? Because frankly, you looked better without Deshaun. I don't think Deshaun was a top 15 quarterback in the league when he played, and he's paid like he's the best. And if that's the case, and his cap situation, he was a $19 million cap hit this year, and next year I think it's 61 million, right? So they are going to have to tear some pieces away. And if he's not a top 10 guy at least, they're just not going to be very good because they're not going to have this roster. And that's what I think is the most disappointing thing from the Cleveland standpoint is this was the year to maybe strike gold, where you had the cap space available. You were supposed to have top level quarterback. This was supposed to be the year that you could put together a run. And watching them, they had the roster to do it. It looked like they just didn't have the quarterback play, you know. And maybe the defense wasn't quite as good as we thought, but you know, it's hard to play complimentary football when the quarterback's turning it over too, you know.
Well, the thing about CJ Stroud, I just want to point out, is he did that against the number one ranked defense in the NFL.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah, to that point, that defense was supposed to be so good. Cleveland was favored on the road in that game because people didn't think Houston was going to be able to block the Browns and move the ball at all. And he lit them up, scored 45.
yeah, it's crazy. So all respect to Houston. It's going to be Houston and Jacksonville in the AFC South moving forward. I God knows what the Titans are going to do. They're back to basement dwellers. I've
Well, because
uh
the Colts also look pretty good. You know, it's like they won 9 games with Gardner Minshew and they hit what looks like a home run at the coaching position. You know, so I think
yeah,
it's going to be tough. And honestly, it's like we'll have to see how Anthony Richardson is. I feel pretty nervous if I'm Jacksonville. Now, I kind of expect them to bounce back, but like I don't know that Trevor's going to be better than CJ though. You know what I mean? As good as I thought Trevor was going to be, and he clearly has the physical tools, but CJ also has the physical tools, you know?
I want to push back because I think Cleveland can renegotiate Deshaun's
Yeah.
contract for 1 year. I think they get their Super Bowl window is closing, but I don't think it's closed shut. But they, you know, just thinking about like all the quarterbacks, the Browns could use a guy like Baker Mayfield.
Right. Yeah, we keep making that joke, but I love it. Yeah. And my question to you, I don't know logistically what this would look like. Would you try to move on from Deshaun and just kind of cut your losses? I mean, it would end up being a horrible deal because I don't know that you could even get a second round pick for Deshaun with that contract.
Uh,
I wouldn't give up a second round pick for Deshaun, you know, but could you get a third and a fourth or something like that?
no, you have to write it out with Deshaun. Like
That's
nobody
probably right.
contract.
Right.
Only teams that are dumb enough to take that contract are the Cleveland Browns. So,
Yeah, if Aaron Rodgers retired, maybe you try to ship him off to the Jets, but I don't know. But
but the thing is, and I was thinking about this. We were arguing back before the last Baker season. People were arguing like, should Baker or Lamar get the contract first? Well, whoever gets the contract first is going to is going to be like a 5 year, 30 million a year kind of deal. And it's like the Browns would be jumping through hoops to try to get that kind of
right,
navigation.
right. And if you had Baker Mayfield on $30 million a year right now in Cleveland, you'd be feeling really good, you know? And the problem is, like I said, you're just not going to be able to keep that roster together.
Had Jimmy G on the 30 million that he got, you'd be feeling a lot better. If you
Right.
had if you had a Derek Carr for his 150 million, you'd be feeling a lot better. If you had Russell Wilson,
Yeah.
you'd be better because at least Russell Wilson will play all of the games for you.
And make some plays sometimes. Yeah, you know. Russell
Sometimes
Wilson's probably better than Flacco today. Yeah, he's probably better, right? He's probably better, right? Yeah.
and the baffling thing. So as an embittered ex Cleveland Browns fan, part of me wants them to still do well because I did really love the Browns, but at the same time, they just prove why they're the organization that they are because they make rash decisions and they spend way too much money for unproven things, and they thought they were avoiding that with Baker, but they went so far in the other way. Like if they would have gotten rid of Baker and got literally anybody else, I'd still be a Browns fan today,
Right.
and still be in the playoffs today most likely. But they did the dumbest thing possible, made one of the worst trades in the history of the NFL, and they deserve to lose.
And
So
what they did kind of reminds me of what some of these NBA teams do when they have like the Pelicans did this with Anthony Davis, where Anthony Davis was kind of so good so fast they almost kind of panicked and tried to win right away instead of letting things slow cook around them and really like the Thunder let things develop and kind of process and they get these guys and they improve and they build as a team, and they let it slow cook versus trying to microwave it. And the Browns are like, oh man, we got this roster right now. We got to microwave this thing and try to win it right away. And it ends up just being a disaster. And now
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, you're kind of stuck in the same situation that you're always going to be in Cleveland almost, which is okay. It's like this was our best year in forever. It's going to be a wild card exit, and we're probably not going to advance to the divisional round anytime soon to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's bad. It's bad in Cleveland, but that's not anything new.
Right.
So I want to quickly touch on the two primetime games that we've already seen. Uh Jared Goff got the revenge.
Yeah, I thought so. Just quickly on the Lions, I thought it was a great story, and like what an easy team to root for. How cool it was that they got to host a playoff game for the first time in 30 years, won it. Jared Goff kind of gets his revenge. I'm not sure the best team won that game. And I think if they played 10 times, even in Detroit, the Rams probably win six of them. But give the Lions credit because they bent and not broke on defense multiple times and got field goal, held them to field goals when they got touchdowns on the other end. And then, the Rams deserves some blame in this regard where you have to spend two timeouts to avoid delay of games in the second half. And then, when the clock starts ticking down and the Lions get one more, it's you kind of screw yourself at the end of the game. And so the Lions deserve a lot of credit. Great season for them. They all of a sudden get to host another playoff game, which it's called. I would expect them to win almost no matter. It's like I would love it if Baker won two playoff games, right? It's like we obviously are Baker fans on this show. I don't know that I could pick them in full confidence to go beat Detroit in Detroit, even if they won today. You know what I mean? So I expect the Lions probably to make the conference championship game. And what a great season for him. And I think it's cool that Jared Goff got his revenge on the Rams and he looks really good at times indoors when he has good protection. It's like I wouldn't want to like I'll put it this way, and this is the other game we didn't talk about. If Jared Goff had to go to Kansas City this weekend, I don't think he would have done a lot better than Tua, to be honest. I think he's a comparable player, but when things are going right, like they were, he can look really good. And he made the key first down pass on second down to ice the game and played a great game. And, the Rams were pretty good, and Stafford's still really good, man. I mean, he's still, when he's playing well, has a lot of talent as far as, throwing the ball and stuff. And the Rams, I think, have a pretty bright future. Williams, the running back, stud. Puka Nakua is unbelievable. And they just have a few things to rebuild, but that's an organization that I have confidence in that can keep it going. As for the Lions, they're going to lose Ben Johnson, the offense coordinator, this offseason, almost assuredly. But Dan Campbell is the head coach. He sets a great culture, and some of these guys, like the Harbaughs, always hire great staff, and maybe Dan Campbell will be one of these guys that just always brings in someone who can call the plays and run his offense. And, the players are going to play hard for that guy, and he just has that ability to relate to him. And, like I said, just a special moment in Detroit last night, I thought. And even as someone that was like, I picked the Rams, so you kind of half rooting for him because I like being right, still have to appreciate what the Lions did and still was happy for him and thought it was really, really cool.
First home win playoff in 32 years.
Yeah.
Fun fact, I turned 31 in about 6 weeks, and I have never known anything in my life but Lions disappointment,
Yeah.
even because I'm not from Detroit, but you grow up knowing that the teams on Lake Erie are just all bad.
Right.
And this year was a pretty decent year for the Lake Erie Bros. So
Yeah.
shout out to it. Yeah, no, I Matt Stafford still unbelievable.
Oh,
Like
great. Yeah.
even like his throwing hand bandaged up to the nines,
The way he
gets
can kind of underhand those balls and spin it is like really cool, man. It's just cool, and like watching him play. It's
It was,
impressive.
but I had the pleasure of watching the game with my friend from Detroit,
Yeah.
true born and bred Lions fan, and he was he's a stoic guy, but even he was a little he did it was a little misty, you know.
Yeah.
He's younger than me, and
Right.
he so it was a really special night. Um, I was right about the Dolphins.
Yeah,
Uh,
why don't you go first about that game? What was your main takeaways? I want to hear what you have to say about that Dolphins game.
so growing up in Oklahoma, we've had tons and tons of ice storms, and that wind comes off the plains in the wintertime, and you just look outside and you know, God, I have to go check the mail. And if I make one wrong step, I'm gonna fall and I'm gonna hit this grass that is essentially concrete for all intents.
Right.
Just watching guys and like trying to do anything, trying to catch like a basketball in that weather is like awful. Trying to catch a football that's coming, however many miles per hour at your head, and it's just a frozen rock.
Right.
Terrible. Not where I would imagine a dolphin would want to ever be.
Out of its habitat, you might say.
It's yeah, it's a little bit out of their habitat, and that is where our poor dolphins, who I was saying was going to implode and definitely imploded. Tua was being managed that entire game, and you could however many throws he threw behind him, it just lets you know that like no, they did not trust him to push the ball down the field,
At
and
all.
the you want, if you're a Dolphins fan, the one thing you have going for you is that our guys are faster than their guys, and they're going to get down the field. So push that way. And that the Kansas City Chiefs just outplayed them in their home element. We've seen a lot like the Lions game. The reason Los Angeles had to use those timeouts is because the Lions were using their home field advantage. They couldn't
Right.
get the play. They couldn't
Right.
hear on the field, and Kansas City just let winter do its job for them, which is great.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was maybe a little more impressed with Kansas City than the general consensus seems to be because everyone kind of is like, oh, well, the Dolphins had to play in the cold. I thought it was a pretty dominant performance from Kansas City because the Dolphins basically had one kind of rainbow lollipop kind of pass up to Tyreek Hill, and he made a great play on the ball, but they almost didn't have a first down the rest of the game, and like never really were a threat to score. So I thought a couple things. Number one, Kansas City is built to play in the playoffs, and it looks ugly, but like, they can win a game where they have six butt curve field goals and one touchdown. And I think they could beat a lot of teams like that in the weather, at least. And it made me really think if I was the rest of the AFC, I wouldn't want to play Kansas City because they're kind of a fist fight, gonna make it ugly, but you still have Patrick Mahomes, who's just scary. Rashee Rice is getting better and better and better as the season goes along. Whether he's a one or a two, it's kind of one of these situations where, like, with Mahomes at quarterback, he may be a one, and with anybody else, he may be a two, but he looks good, and he's getting better and better and better as the season's going. And I just wouldn't want to play that team. They run the ball well. They play great defense. Snead and McDuffie, I thought were awesome in that game. I mean, they locked down Tyreek Hill. They really, really were dominant in pass coverage. And yeah, and what you said, Tua, if he was in the NFC, like I'll give you a team that I would like to see Tua go to. If Tua played in Atlanta in a dome, where in the NFC, where are you going to go? Green Bay, okay, it's going to be cold. Detroit, dome team. San Francisco, going to be 60 and sunny. Cowboys, dome team, right? Maybe Philly, but most of those teams play in a dome in the NFC. You'd be in a dome and, obviously in Atlanta. in that division, Carolina's not terrible weather. Tampa's obviously warm weather. Saints are a dome. It's like if Tua was in the right sort of environment in the NFC, I would like him a lot more. But in the AFC, watching the difference between him and Patrick Mahomes in that weather, it was like watching a senior in high school versus a fifth grader play quarterback. And the way they were calling the offense reflected that, where Tua had the one pick where the ball just frankly floated on him and he couldn't grip it and it floated. It was an easy interception for Kansas City. And they never, ever really tried to push the ball down the field besides that, where it's like they did not trust him to throw it. And on the contrast, Patrick Mahomes, if you were just watching that game and didn't know the temperature or anything like that, you would have thought the weather was a non-factor basically. It's like he wasn't even wearing sleeves. He was gripping like throwing it like normal, pushing the ball down the field, looked like a normal, just a regular Patrick Mahomes game, just kind of another day at the office. And I don't know how you could see that as Miami and think we're going to make Tua one of the highest paid players in the league in Miami in the AFC. And if they had beat Buffalo and they got a home playoff game, we may be singing a different tune today, and it may have drastically changed our opinion. But it was just so aesthetically bad, in Kansas City that it was really one of those deals where it's like, man, so Tua is going to have to play in the AFC. Mahomes, who obviously handles the cold well, he's one of the best players we've ever seen. Josh Allen is kind of built for cold weather games. Now he didn't play good last year against Cincinnati, but we've seen him go to Kansas City and play great. We've seen him function in the cold and do a good job. Joe Burrow, who's not a rocket arm guy, but has obviously shown that he excels in cold weather in the playoffs. CJ Stroud looks like a stud. We'll see what Trevor Lawrence develops into, but Lamar Jackson, Baltimore, obviously that doesn't bother him. It's like all these guys, Tua, you're looking around. It's like, man, is he going to end up being the eighth best quarterback in our own conference? Where every time we step on the field in a playoff game, are we going to be at a disadvantage in that position, especially if there's any weather involved? So I thought it was like honestly, outside of maybe the Cowboys, that was the most concerning loss of the weekend to me was the Dolphins from that standpoint, where really, what are you going to do in the AFC? Because the Bills aren't going anywhere in your own division. I don't think the Jets are necessarily going to get a lot better. We'll see what the Patriots do. Maybe Gerard Mayo is superstar head coach, and maybe they figure a quarterback out. But it's just a big ask for a warm weather team with a quarterback like Tua to try to make any sort of deep playoff run in the AFC. Because anytime Tua's like, I think I heard the stat. I think he's 0-14 if the weather is under 40, not against the spread, just outright. So it's like he doesn't win if it's any sort. I just was very concerned from the Dolphins standpoint.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I think that's right. Yeah, I don't know what you do. It like
Stuff. And I like their coach. I'd say, when I didn't put much of that game on him, to be honest. It's like I thought he kind of called it how you had to, and things were really going to have to go a certain way for them to stay competitive in that game, and it didn't. So, uh, yeah, what do you do with Tua and with that quarterback situation in Miami now? And are you going to be kind of stuck in the same no man's land that we talked about with Dallas, where it's like, okay, you're never really going to be bad enough because Tua, 10 weeks out of the year against a bad team and good weather is going to be really good, where you're going to be good enough to kind of make the playoffs, but you're never going to be good enough to get over the top, but you're never going to be able to draft someone super high. It's kind of this weird situation, and we see sports teams, across all sports get into that cycle. Like the Blazers with Damian Lillard were kind of in the cycle where it's like, man, you're just kind of, what do you do? It's kind of no man's land for a while, and eventually you're just going to have to reset. And that's what I think the Cowboys and Dolphins both should do. I don't know that either one will, to be honest with you, but that's what I'd be looking for if I was a fan of both teams.
Yeah, yeah. I think you got to ride it with Tua probably one more year just to make sure. But I would start practicing like in February like in Minnesota or North Dakota or something. Just get
Or
reps with.
throw balls outside, like go to Alaska in the middle of the winter,
But it'd be interesting to see if Brian Flores was right about Tua because he got a lot of flack for not really trusting him.
Right.
And, you know, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen there? But
Right.
all right, on to today's game. We're about 35 minutes away from the start of the Steelers and the Bills. Uh, I live in Pittsburgh, so I have my Steelers colors on today.
Right.
I'm a little
How you feeling?
I I don't like the Steelers in the
Yeah,
but
if
Ro-
they can kind of get turnover happy Josh Allen going, they have a shot. And if not, they could lose by 3 touchdowns, is kind of my takeaway from this game. And if I'm a Steelers fan, I was talking to my buddy about this weekend. I want the weather to be as bad as possible. Where I would have honestly been a little pissed that they didn't play yesterday because it's like their chance is just an ugly game. And I think Najee Harris is a power back who may have a good game this weekend. We'll have to see, but he's the kind of back who sometimes excels in horrible weather. I don't think as much as I like James Cook, I don't think they have the kind of power running game that's really built for cold weather. They kind of do with Josh Allen, to be honest, and they may lean on that pretty heavy today. But like I said, if Josh Allen plays a clean game, it's hard for me to see a scenario where the Steelers can still win. But if Josh Allen has 3 turnovers or something, which he is very capable of doing, Steelers could be right there.
yeah, I think that you got to lure him into playing hero ball.
Right.
And there's something Mike Tomlin can do even without TJ Watt. I think he can put up enough of a defensive pressure
Right.
to put the stick out, lure him into a pick, maybe a fumble,
Right.
some
Yeah,
um
it's gonna have to be a little bit of a weird game from the Steelers, but we see that all the time in the playoffs, I think. So
happens. But then, well, it also would help me because I've been preaching the demise of the Dolphins and Bills all year, and I got the Dolphins.
how about the Bills being the 2 seed anyway?
Oh, like
We both
give
thought
me
they were maybe gonna miss the playoffs when after week 12 when they were 6-6 or week 13. But
well,
credit, things kind of broke their way. Then they've won despite Josh Allen in some games too, which is maybe a good sign if you're a Bills fan. Kind of a good and bad sign, honestly. And one of those weird things. It's
you take the good with
like
the bad.
yeah.
But
And then how do you feel about Tampa today?
dude, okay, so I put my foot down and I said Tampa weeks and weeks and weeks ago is going to win the NFC South and go to the playoffs. I said it, and then I was like, I'm still pretty sure they're going to win. And here we are, fourth seed playing the Eagles. I think that all of the stars are aligning
I agree.
for
Well, to that point quickly, Philly is just coming off the rails, man. And there's like if I was gonna draft who I wanted to play out of every team that made the playoffs, I think Philly would probably be my first pick right now. Literally. It's like I don't know that there's any team in the playoff. Maybe the Steelers, depending on where the game was. Like if I'm the Lions, maybe the Steelers because they got no offense, right? But Philly would have been my second choice because they're just flatly bad on defense. Sirianni looks like he's losing the locker room. Jalen looks like he's about out on the franchise, which is a bad sign because he is, by all metrics, an amazing leader. And it's just looking really, really rough, man. Where this would have been my favorite line of the weekend if Baker Mayfield was 100%. The rib injury scares me because maybe he takes a shot on the first play and can't play the rest of the game, and that's just a little scary anytime you're dealing with ribs. And he doesn't always play great when he's playing through injury. As much as I love Baker Mayfield, sometimes he looks really bad when he tries to play through injury. Uh, but if he was 100%, it would be my favorite bet of the weekend. And if he plays pretty good 80, 90, 95% of what he's capable of doing, I think Tampa wins. And I think the Eagles may fire their coach a year after making the Super Bowl if they lose in Tampa today because the locker room just looks like it's out on Sirianni to me.
Oh yeah. No, I think that, as I said, the stars are lining for a Tampa Bay Baker Mayfield revenge tour. Because you get the Eagles tonight, they beat you.
Okay. That's what I thought. Tampa's underdogs in that game.
Yeah, 3 point.
Yeah, 3 point home dog.
You win, you go to Detroit. They beat you earlier in the season.
Right.
Go to San Francisco. They beat you earlier in the season.
Or
If you win Super Bowl versus Patrick Mahomes, who
like
is
can we just let's just win today first before we start talking. Okay, like let's just win today.
Revenge Tour 2024, let's see what this team is made of because
That's
they've looked fantastic. They've
right.
looked horrible. They Baker Mayfield posted a perfect passer rating, beating the team that just took it to the Cowboys in Dallas.
Right.
No, they're capable.
They're
It
like the worst version of the Bills, man. You kind of don't know what team you're gonna get always with them. But when they look good, they look pretty good. When the Bills look good, they look like they could be the best team in the league. And when Tampa looks good, it's like, okay, they're a good team.
That's about right. Is when they look good, they look like a
They're
good
pretty
team.
good. Yeah, they're a pretty good team.
But I have to say they played all of these teams, like the scores don't say that they played them close, but they played all these teams pretty. They gave them a good run for their money at times, and it just that it was early in the season.
And if they
Off,
can keep it close, is the pressure in Philly going to make everyone a little tight if the game's close in the second half, fourth quarter? It's like,
yeah,
is Jay Brown going to get a little flustered? Is Sirianni going to get a little,
AJ Brown isn't playing,
yeah, okay. That
so
hurts.
like uh, you're removing one of the big safety valves for Jalen Hurts.
No, that's a big deal.
That's a big deal. And like whenever it came out that he wasn't playing, the line dipped to 2.5, which I think AJ Brown is worth more than a half a point on the road. But whatever.
Yeah,
Vegas doesn't give away money, so we'll see what happens.
they sure don't. Yeah, I'm excited to watch, man. I think these are going to be fun games today. I really hope we get some good games today because the Lions game was obviously a great game, and the rest of them kind of suck to watch, man. It's like honestly, it's like we hadn't had a lot of close games, so I'm hoping both these end up being competitive, something to watch in the fourth quarter. That's what I really hope. Kind of not none of these teams, yeah, obviously Tampa, but it's like the Cowboys or Chiefs aren't playing today, which are so it's like let's just keep it close. I obviously root for Tampa, I know you are too, but all
Yeah,
right,
you picking? Who are you pick? Who are your picks?
I'm gonna take the Bills. I would take the Steelers and the points because I think it's too many points, but I like the Bills. I'm gonna go Tampa, man. I think Tampa's gonna. I think Tampa's gonna win. I'll say it. It's like I think the Eagles are falling apart enough, and Tampa, if they put together a good first quarter, I think Philly may fold. You know what I mean? So it's like if they could start off hot at home, I would probably take the ball if I were them. I know that's not what a lot of teams do, but Green Bay, I said I like that from a strategy standpoint. Kind of getting the ball and going down scoring first. I would try to do that if I were Tampa today. I think they're gonna win. I'll say it. Yeah, I think Tampa's gonna beat them.
Let's go.
Let's
Yeah, I'm ready.
go.
Bills and Tampa Bay for today.
We agree, man. All right. We want to thank everyone for listening to this 13th episode. keep an eye out. We'll try to do a recap. We got Alex back in the country, so we should be able to churn out some more of these in more regular time. So thank you for everyone listening, and we'll see you soon.